Police in Brussels have clashed with farmers protesting the EU's planned free trade deal with the South American Mercosur countries. Some European farmers, especially from France, fear being undercut by cheap Latin American food imports. Germany and Spain backed the trade deal, but French President Emmanuel Macron says it still needs some work. In a last-minute compromise bid, EU representatives say they have decided upon additional proposals to protect Europe's farming industry. Our correspondent Rosie Birchard was at the protest and sent us this report.
If you want to see what opposition to the EU's trade mega deal plans look like, this is it. Farmers are out in force in Brussels and the city is ablaze once again. Farmers are protesting EU green rules and they're also trying to derail a major trade agreement the EU is hoping to sign with the Mercosur trading bloc. Farmers fear that might lead to unfair competition, and they're not convinced by safeguards the EU says it has put in place to avoid that.
Du coup, aujourd'hui, c'est un non catégorique pour le Mercosur.
This is a categorical no to Mercosur. It's above all a strong sign of farmers' opposition and the opposition of businesses and people concerned. Consumers have to understand that they have the farmers' future in their hands, and they have to decide if they want to eat Brazilian, Belgian, German or French meat produced in a healthy way and close to home.
Now, critics say that derailing this deal would be a major geopolitical own goal for Europe, just as the EU is trying to prove that it can still make friends on the global stage and to reduce its reliance on China and to cushion the blow of tariffs from the United States. That deal now very much hangs in the balance. Just a few minutes walk from here, EU leaders are in a summit making decisions about it, and you can see farmers are very much trying to sway them. We've seen the heavy police presence. These people have come from different parts of Europe. Farmers are not the only ones that are against this major EU trade deal. Climate campaigners also fear it could lead to increased deforestation. France is the key EU country that's trying to block it. A couple of other countries are also on board, although the majority do want to push it through. And the fact is, for now, we just don't know exactly where that's going.
These cows might not care, but their prime cuts might soon become cheaper to European beef eaters. It's economically significant as beef, soy and other agricultural products are a major export for Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. The EU in turn primarily exports machinery, chemical products and pharmaceuticals to the South American countries. In 2024, EU exports to the 4 Mercosur countries totaled 53.3 billion euros, whereas Mercosur exports to the EU added up to 57 billion, making the EU-Mercosur's second largest trade partner. And trade volume is set to increase. The trade agreement between the two blocs is expected to see tariffs on both sides drop by 90%. But that's one reason for regular protests, especially on the European side. French farmers, for example, fear that agricultural products from South America will be cheaper in the EU than their own. Climate activists are demanding that the EU push harder for the protection of the Amazon rainforest. And environmentalists complain that the standards in the Mercosur countries, including those on the use of pesticides and plastics, do not meet European standards.
The Commission itself estimates that the agreement is only going to lead to a 0.05% increase in EU GDP by 2040. So we really encourage MEPs to prioritize the costs for society, the costs for nature, the costs for the climate and for people's health, instead of those extremely limited economic impacts.
Proponents of the agreement, however, argue that it's extremely important, especially in these current times.
When we have problems doing business in one part of the world, the US now, then we have to open business in other parts of the world.
Even though Ireland, Poland and Hungary, in addition to France, are opposed to the free trade agreement, it is highly likely that the EU and the Mercosur countries will finally sign their agreement after 25 years of negotiation.
Our Brussels correspondent Rosie Birchard is following the story for us. Rosie, you've talked to protesters today. What did they tell you?
Yeah, this square was full of angry farmers now. You can just see the smouldering remains of their anger. Firefighters have been out putting out fires that were set here. Farmers that I spoke to fear that they would face unfair competition from increased exports, especially of meat from those South American Mercosur countries. I should say that the European Commission, that's the EU's executive that is hoping to sign this deal in a matter of days, says that it has already put in place, or is in the process of putting in place, safeguards to kick in and to make sure that farmers do not face too much unfair competition. So it says they are ready to go. They have listened to farmers. Farmers also complain about EU green rules, and the Commission is really keen to show that it's listening. But it has also, over the past years, already been in the process of watering down those climate-friendly rules within the European Union in response to farmers saying it is too difficult for them to make ends meet just now.
The EU has been negotiating this trade deal with the South American Mercosur countries for 25 years now. That's a quarter of a century. How come there is what seems like a last-minute debate within the EU now?
That is exactly what countries who want this to go through quickly, and that includes, above all, Germany, are asking those who have come up with this last-minute opposition, and principally France. Now, those 25 years dragged on because of these internal disagreements within the EU, and there seemed to be a turning point over the last year, especially given the tariffs from the United States, the EU looking for new business partners and trying to show that it can still find friends on the global stage, as well as its big efforts to diversify away from reliance on China. German car manufacturers, especially, were very excited about the possibility of decreased tariffs on the other side so they could up their exports. And there was also hope to be able to increase imports from Brazil of critical raw materials that are needed to power things like clean technology and even for weapons manufacturing here in the European Union. And now the fact is this deal really does seem to hang in the balance with just a couple of days to go before it was supposed to be signed in what the EU hoped would be a flagship moment to mark the end of this year.
If this deal can't be reached now, what would be the consequences?
Analysts I've been speaking to would say this would just look like a sort of geopolitical catastrophe, another instance of European disunity derailing the bloc's plans and efforts to face up to a shifting global order. Now, there are plenty of people that would be happy if the deal would not go through, that should be said, including farmers, but also climate campaigners that really warn this would drive deforestation. It is extremely divisive, as we've seen play out here in the streets of Brussels, and it is divisive also among EU leaders that are meeting just a few minutes' walk away from me. It is now in their hands, and the fear is that if they decide to delay now, that it could kill the deal forever, because, of course, on the other side, on the Mercosur side, there is growing impatience with the EU, and they are basically sending the message that they have other partners that they could look to if Europe doesn't want to do business.
Rosie Birchard out on the streets of Brussels. Thank you so much for your reporting.